Okay, as people start to file in, just like to say hello and welcome you all. And thanks for taking time out of your very busy Wednesday in the middle of spring. My name is Joe Salemi. I'm the Deputy Executive Director here at Landscape Ontario. And today, Landscape Ontario's COVID-19 Task Force presents a free webinar for the landscape horticulture profession with special guest Domenic Richichi, human resource expert with EIO Solutions. Hey, Domenic, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Joe. I'm glad to be here.
Right on. And we also have on our panel from the LO COVID-19 Task Force, Alan White from Turf Systems, James Riddell from Site One Landscape Supply, Jeff Olson from BTN Nursery, and Peter Ganan from Oriole Landscaping. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us this afternoon. By providing information about COVID-19 vaccination and establishing supportive policies and practices, employers can help increase vaccine uptake amongst their workforce. Although COVID-19 vaccine supply is limited, it's not too early to share clear and complete and accurate messages promoting confidence in the decision to get vaccinated and engage your employees in plans to address potential barriers to vaccination. Strong confidence in vaccines within your workplace leads to more people getting vaccinated, which leads to fewer COVID-19 illnesses, hospitalizations, and deaths. On April 29th, 2021, the Ontario government amended the Employment Standards Act to require employers to provide employees with up to 3 days of paid infectious disease emergency leave because of certain reasons related to COVID-19. This entitlement is in addition to employees' rights to unpaid infectious disease and emergency leave. So with Domenic, an HR expert from EIO Solutions here today, we have some very pertinent questions that everyone's been asking. And we'll also get the point of view from our great panel. So Domenic, I'll start with you because there's some really big questions on our mind at the moment. And I guess let's start off with, how do we encourage our staff to get vaccinated? Knowing that, it's one of those things and maybe this is also a question, can we require vaccinations of our staff?
Okay, those are great questions. And I've been asked that for quite a while now from my clients. So I would like to start with answering the question, can you require your staff to get vaccinated? The answer as of today, this could change going forward, but as of today, it is a no. You cannot require your staff to get vaccinated. Now, the law does require, on the health and safety side, that every employer has to do everything in their power to keep their employees safe and to provide a safe environment for them to work in. So it would make sense to say, okay, well, if that's the case, then I would like everyone to get vaccinated to, as Joe talked about, is to, reduce sickness and reduce COVID. Unfortunately, under the Ontario human rights, we cannot force people to do certain things due to religious, to other categories. So to answer that question, no, we can. As of today, we cannot force anyone to take the vaccine. Now, would it be beneficial for all the employees to take it? Absolutely. I mean, there's lots of benefits to the employers where, you're keeping your workplace healthy. You'll be reducing your absences. I'm sure that everybody here is probably experiencing a little higher absenteeism than, pre-COVID. It'll improve your productivity. And, if we can get everyone vaccinated quicker, it will improve the overall morale because, let's face it, hopefully we don't have to wear these as well. And it just kind of will get back to normal and the morale will change. Benefits to the employees, obviously prevent COVID, don't get sick, don't get your family sick, your elderly sick. And again, just improve the overall morale. So what are we left with during COVID? There's a couple of things. One are the Covert Protocols that I think everyone's been following, since COVID started, in the sense of, everyone has to wear a mask, you have to social distance, you have to do the self-assessment when you walk into the workplace. You have to ask those questions. I'm not sure if you're aware Those questions there's added questions that need to be asked. Usually it was like the top three, which were, are you being tested? Have you been around anyone with COVID? And are you experiencing fevers, runny nose, cough? Well, now there's some other questions that need to be asked. Things like, do you have pink eye? And there's a handful of other questions that need to be asked prior to an employee coming back to work, coming into work. Now, what can a company do for the employees? Basically, is provide information to the employees. There is a whole bunch of information out there, good information, bad information, fake news information, the neighbors' information. There is just so much out there. And I think what the issues are right now is that employees are confused. I'll be honest with you. Even myself, I'm confused. What should I do? I think what's important is encouraging everyone to take the vaccine, provide proper information. There's a whole bunch of information you can find on ontario.ca that you can print off, a lot of information on COVID, on the vaccines, and give to your employees. There are some companies actually, if I'm not mistaken, I did put them down here. Just to give you an idea of what some companies are doing. There's a company called Ecom Lumber, another one called Oliver Pork, which are basically offering their employees a cash bonus to get the vaccine, in order to increase the numbers and get their workplace safe. So there are some companies, going above and beyond to get this done. There's even a town in Nunavut that, with its citizens, they're doing a cash draw, encouraging the citizens to get vaccinated. So there are companies out there that are getting creative to encourage the employees. But the important thing is communication. That's what the panel and I were talking prior to this webinar starting, is there's just way too much information. The government is poor in giving the information, but it's out there. So the best thing I would think to do is get information, get posters that you can download, give them to the employees, and encourage them. Other things that other companies are doing is companies are encouraging their leaders to be vaccine champions. So, for example, you have a plant manager, you have a shift supervisor. If they got their vaccine, make them the champion. Get them to talk to the employees and explain, here's why I got it, and here's why we should all get it. Allow them to share. The decision is very important because, like I said, way too much information, and it's always great to talk to people that have gotten it and the reasons why they've gotten it. Excuse me. Another thing that employers are doing is making visible the decision to get vaccinated. So, for example, an employees are getting vaccinated. You can give them a bonus. You can put their picture on a wall. The big thing now on social media is, getting the vaccination and taking a selfie. Get them to do that, post it, put it on a board, encourage them to get it. And that's basically what employers as of right now are doing to get their employees vaccinated. Are there any questions regarding vaccinations right now?
I don't see any questions yet, but maybe just to follow up on that last comment, for those of you that have joined us this afternoon, the Landscape Ontario COVID-19 Task Force has recently developed a toolkit for members to use that you can use for your own businesses to encourage your own staff to get their vaccines. And so it's ready to go. You can use the templated emails, the templated imagery, and even engage in your own social media campaign. And so thanks, Scott, for bringing up the screen. So here's the website. If you go to horttrades.com/vaccine-resource-hub, you'll get access to that entire toolkit. So I would encourage you to go there and take advantage of that. Absolutely. And so I am getting a question. Domenic, about the incentives for employees to get vaccinated.
Yes.
What can we dive into that a little bit more, and maybe even take the devil's advocate side? What if an employee looks at it like, well, you're just bribing me to get a vaccine? How do we handle that?
That's a great question. Again, it's all about the communication, and it's all about the message you want to put across to your employees. And the message has to be that the reason why we're encouraging this is in order to defeat COVID. We want to make sure everyone here in the workplace is safe. We're not spreading amongst each other, that there's no outbreak, and we want to protect the employees and protect their families. You just have to keep repeating that question. You are going to have the employees that are the anti-vaccine people. You're going to have the employees saying, "Oh, you're just bribing me to go and get it." Absolutely, but stick to the message. The message will never change. We want to ensure the safety of our employees and their families, and ensure that the company just can keep thriving. We don't want to shut the place down. I've already gone through, I would say, the last couple of weeks, 3 or 4 of clients that they have a mini outbreak, and 2 of them were they shut down voluntarily to control the outbreak. One of them was forced to shut down for a period of 2 weeks. So the benefits kind of outweigh the risk, because we want to ensure the safety of the employees, but we also want to ensure that the company will still prosper and remain open, and so we can pay you, and we keep the company going until this COVID thing is behind us.
I think that's a good point, Joe, is Dominic's making there. And it's just to make it, while we can't force employees, it's creating that environment that's a positive environment for, as you say, their protection, but a social environment that is acceptable. I think Jeff had an example where there was some hesitancy, but once 90% of the team got vaccinated, the 10% outliers, all of a sudden, how do I get signed up now? Because now all of a sudden they feel like those outliers, and something happens to me, no one's going to look after me now. So I think creating these opportunities, that was the primary reason behind the Vaccine Resource Hub, was to make available tools for communication, to create. And Scott, I'm sure towards the end of this, we'll go into some other things that the creative digital team at LO is doing to help small businesses, medium businesses, and large members really have the right communication tools to put forward to their team. And ultimately, at the end of the day, protect their peers, protect their customers, and provide the opportunity to continue to work to support their families and themselves. So I think that's the main crux of it. I also had a question quickly too here, Joe, if I could. You mentioned that we're all utilizing that required questionnaire as employees enter the workforce. And you're right, some of those questions have changed in what we're asking. Is it acceptable to ask the team, now that the significant numbers of team members are getting vaccinated, have they received a first shot or second shot on that questionnaire, just to keep track of who is vaccinated and who isn't vaccinated on the team?
I would probably side on the side of caution and consider that more of it's a privacy question. I would not ask that at this time. Since we're not allowed to enforce it, then we're not allowed to ask it.
Okay.
Right. And so I guess what I'd like to do is get insight from the panel. And Peter, I'm going to start with you. What are you doing over at Oriole to encourage your staff to get vaccinated?
Well, we implemented the paid sick leave last year at the beginning of the pandemic, and we have continued that. It's actually been very useful for us, and we look forward to getting reimbursed as of April 19th for sick days since April 19th. But we've also used that time available to our employees to reimburse them for time lost at work while getting their vaccines. So I have employees that have taken a day off because they've felt unwell after getting the vaccine. I know I got my vaccine and I had a bit of a fever the night after, and it would have been difficult to work in that condition. And we've allowed our staff to take time off. It's unfortunate, but I definitely don't want to penalize them for getting the vaccine. And I think to Alan's point, there's a lot of camaraderie that happens where everybody's looking out for everyone else. And I think that'll take care of probably 80% of my company. And there will be a handful of people who are reluctant to get the vaccine for various reasons. And there will be a point in the future when the restrictions begin lifting, like in the States, where they say people who are fully vaccinated can meet without masks. And when they start differentiating between vaccinated and unvaccinated permitted activities, those people who are not vaccinated will want to be vaccinated. I suspect that stigma of having to wear a mask with your friends or in public will be the final push.
Yep, I agree with you.
I
Jeff.
think it's helpful what Peter's saying, and there are some of us that have either been vaccinated ourselves or have team members within your company that have had adverse reactions to the vaccine. But two things I think that come of it: one, everybody gets through the other side, so seeing their peers, and it's not as ominous as the unknown. And two, having this for employers and the employees, the ability that we can keep them, we pay them for the day off for the 2 days. We lose a little productivity, but think of the productivity you lose, as Domenic alluded to, if you shut down for 2 weeks. So just having that reassurance and support from the province to give our employees the time off, I would anticipate it. And if they're not sick, the majority of our team has willingly come in to share their story and to be part of the team still. So it hasn't been a significant problem, but I think I would account not all of your team member, but some will have an adverse reaction. And this program, as the government rolls it out, will reimburse you, so the employee doesn't have to apply to the government to get funding. You just keep them on your payroll account for those 3 days or 2 days or 1 day in your application for reimbursement.
Thanks, Alan. Jeff, we'll come over to you. Over at BTN, how are you encouraging your staff to get the vaccination?
Well, the first thing we're trying to do is a better job of messaging than our provincial government. So we're certainly trying to be consistent in our messaging and how important it is. I guess, we have a unique situation in that, growers in our industry have temporary foreign workers. And that's been a huge risk area for all growers across the country. And in fact, we had an outbreak last fall, and in our temporary foreign worker housing. I think that outbreak, coupled with people knowing other people who have gotten very sick from the disease, has really driven the demand for vaccination. And in our company, seeing what we had to go through that outbreak, really when the vaccines came, everybody was jumping on board to get them. We're 99% vaccinated with first shots in our company. HR is keeping a list of that, and it's all about, I think, messaging it in a positive way. We're trying to keep track of it. We're letting our teams know, hey, where they can get vaccinated, what clinic is open. Hey, it's your turn. Go for it. We will not invade your privacy, but as a help to you, we'll keep your second vaccination date on file so that we can remind you when it's the second vaccination date. Those types of things, not seeing it as a stigma, but more seeing it as encouragement. And hey, if there's an employee or two that really is adamant not to get vaccinated. So we had first of all, we had again, in our temporary foreign workers, in one of our locations, we have 45 temporary foreign workers. 44 of them got vaccinated. One decided not to, and then the next week he's like, "When can I get vaccinated?" So it was a great example of just that what Peter was talking about was that a fear of missing out. I guess is what people are going to be feeling, and the more of that, and the other thing, finally, what I'll say is that we are the carrots, the stick approach, where there is going to come a time when you are not going to be able to do very much unless you've been vaccinated. And so, trying to softly let people know that, hey, you could be, in a situation where you're not able to do a whole lot, is encourages them to go out and get it done.
For sure. Yeah, and I'm not sure it's too hard to beat what the provincial government's doing in terms of communication. So thanks for that, Jeff. Alan, over at Turf Systems, how are you encouraging your employees to get their vaccination?
I think first and foremost, it's just communication, making the posters Scott's made available to us, the fact sheets. I was amazed how fast socially they started talking about it. And again, I was one of the first ones to get vaccinated. Probably half of my team now is vaccinated. They saw me go through a little bit of the rough bumpy ride. Having a little humility that I'm not invincible too, I think goes a long way. But I'm kind of surprised at first. There seemed to be a lot of at least vocal concern about it, but as soon as it's become available to younger and younger demographic, it seems to be becoming more widely accepted. They want to talk about it evermore in the chat. They're all sharing what their date is. There has been an even surprising consideration around work, seeing myself get sick and taken out for an afternoon. And those that know me, and I've in 30 years never had really a sick day. So when I go home, then they kind of know he must feel like crap. But at the same time, they've just taken that as I scheduled mine on a Thursday afternoon or something. So if it hits me on Friday afternoon, it's not going to impact us too much, or I scheduled it for the end of the week next week. So I got the weekend to kind of ride it out. So there seems to be, without asking, a considerable amount of, again, I think because we're communicating and making it such a part of the family and team environment, that, again, the consideration for each other and consideration for the team is strong. So I think that's where we're at right now. And I like the idea Domenic had, and I think we reward our employees for a lot of things here, but just offering them like a Tim's card or something. Let me know when you get vaccinated, and there's a coffee on us. Coffees are on us next week for doing that. I think goes a long way to showing the team that you care and you're looking out for their best interest.
Love that idea. Thanks, Alan. James, we'll come over to you. So at Site One, how are you guys encouraging your many staff to get vaccinated?
Again, it's a little bit of Jeff, a little bit of Alan. Communicate better than the province. We do that from the top down. And again, leading by example, as Alan, Jeff, Peter, everybody's mentioned, by being one of the first vaccinated, meaning that I'm probably one of the oldest people on the team. So a little bit of sunshine, a little bit of not so sunny when you realize you're the oldest guy in your team. But it was honestly probably one of my favorite moments of the pandemic was watching how the teams were so excited to talk about taking the next step to getting through this and getting vaccinated. It was a really big point of pride, and who got booked in and how they did it. We were encouraging people to share their stories on our many Zoom calls or conference calls, right? So how did you find out where to get your vaccine? How did you book your appointment? Some people took a lot of pride in being the sleuth to find the easy ways or the fastest ways to get in. It really is, it's kind of a cliche line to say the family at work and the family at home. The pride everybody had in doing the right thing for both of those families was awesome, and just they encouraged one another in how much they talked about it and the pride they took in finding the best way to get an appointment. So I will say it was a very painless process for us to this point, but Our CEO sends out a message, a COVID update once a month, and his encouragement to get vaccinated as well went a long way. And leading from the top down really helped to drive home the need and the desire.
No doubt. It speaks a lot to the culture over at Site One.
And Joe, it's because we're going through right now the current headlines that are obviously dominating around AstraZeneca and others. I think a little bit to James's point, being the old one, there's a lot of us that got the AstraZeneca. Being here, communication still even after vaccination, because there's lots of news cycle going on. It's just reassuring your team because it's stressful too, right? Some feeling like crabs, some having to reading the news cycle. Again, we humanize it a little bit. That we're here, one, to take care of you, and two, we got through the other side. And I think that goes a long way to, again, humanize what they're reading in the headlines right now.
Absolutely. Domenic, we have a lot of questions coming in from the audience, so I'd like to get to a couple of those.
Yeah.
Someone's asking if you can segregate vaccinated employees and non-vaccinated employees to get them, for example, to have non-vaccinated employees work evenings and weekends and vaccinate, or, the opposite, during the day, is kind of in a shift style.
Yeah. I would say you would need to be careful to ensure that we're not breaking any human rights code and discriminating in any way. Like, for example, I've been working with Fred for a while. All of a sudden, am I working with Steve? And who knows? You just have to be very careful. Is it possible? Yes, but I would exercise a lot of caution in regards to that.
Yeah, I guess the real question is it legal?
Yeah, like I said, I would say that would break some human rights codes. I mean,
yeah. I
would just stick with your protocols, masks, social distancing, etc.
As a follow-up question, Domenic, can employers ask for proof of vaccination, or at least proof of vaccine appointment?
The only thing you cannot ask for is a doctor's note. You can ask for proof of vaccination, or at least the appointment. Yes.
Okay. Great. And so I'm going to continue on with some of these questions because they're really good and I think really pertinent to our conversation. After encouraging your staff to get their vaccine, and then, one of those staff have a really bad adverse reaction, who takes responsibility?
You know what? That's a great question. That's one of the reasons why the government put in these 3 sick days, because obviously people have had some bad reactions. And that's why they instituted the 3 paid days for people to have bad reactions, and they have to stay off. No one will take responsibility for. I'll say the government has taken responsibility because of these 3 sick days. If the question is, am I, as the employer, going to get sued because I'm encouraging it? No, you're not, because the whole government is encouraging it. We're just passing the information through. Okay.
Thank you. And in the case where a family member has to isolate because of exposure to COVID-19, and your employee then has to isolate also because of that potential exposure.
Yep.
How do we handle that? Can you request proof of another negative COVID test in order for them to return back to the workplace?
Sorry, excuse me. There's different scenarios in regards to that. I've been asked that question numerous times, where someone's been isolated, go get a negative test. The problem is, here's how I can explain it. Recently, just a few weeks ago, me and my family, we all got tested for positive. We all tested positive for COVID. So I had a quarantine for 2 weeks. What I was told is that now the virus, I will have the virus for 3 months in my body. So if I go get tested tomorrow, I will test positive, right? However, being quarantined for those 2 weeks, once you're quarantined, you are deemed not to be able to spread the virus. That's why those 2-week quarantine periods are very, very important. The negative test, I wouldn't rely on that, only because of the information I got right from public health. I'm going to test positive for the next 3 months, apparently. So I won't get a negative test.
So asking an employee for a negative test after an exposure, it's probably a mute point.
Exactly. If they do have a family member in isolation, and if they had contact with them, they should isolate as well for those 2 weeks. And there's programs, obviously, through EI that can that they can apply for and get some money for those 2 weeks.
Is it usually, Dominique, advisable? In our teams, we usually advise them to, and we abide by whatever guidance comes from public health. Again, just to push it, because there is so many variables, and again, with the communication out there, is it advisable to encourage your employees and yourself just to rely on them as the authority on how you should behave?
That, you know what, in a nutshell, that's pretty much what I'm saying. Yes, follow public health and their recommendations.
And that
100%.
would include telehealth and that outlet for people to
Correct.
contact. It's usually our first defense when someone calls in symptomatic. We request them to contact telehealth and then report back to us with what telehealth instructed them to do. And then we record that so that we have a record of that with each employee as to what the next steps will be.
Correct. Yeah. Follow their lead.
Right. Thank you. As another direction for the discussion with our panel, I'd like to go down the direction of challenges. What kind of challenges have you experienced with some of your staff? Maybe when it comes to wearing PPE, not wanting to follow protocols. How have you handled that? And maybe if you can give an example, if you have experienced that, and what kind of solution you came up with, or what kind of agreement you came up with. Peter, we'll start with you.
Yeah, we've got, in terms of PPE, we've been providing, obviously, PPE for all of our staff as part of our obligation. And I expect the mask wearing will continue through till everyone's got their second dose. I suspect from public health, that'll be the recommendations. And I mean, we continue to, we've bought all of that stuff, the hand sanitizer, the wash stations, and I fully expect that to be in place for the summer. And I'm hopeful that it's not forever, but.
Yeah, no doubt. Sooner that we can get through this, the better, I think. Jeff, have you experienced any challenges with your employees, and how did that come about, and what kind of solutions did you come up with?
Yeah, I think in the beginning it was just very strange for everybody to have to abide by these new safety policies that we came out with. But in the end, the key was to be providing it. The company provides everything, so they don't have to provide any of the PPE for sure. We provide all of that, and just a zero tolerance policy on it. That took time to culturally change. Safety used to be a thing that we sort of had to do. It wasn't cultural in our company for sure, and I don't know about everybody out there, but it certainly wasn't as front and center. It was like the fourth most important thing on the list of making money, and saying number 4 was health and safety, and today it's over the last 6 months it's just culturally shifted within society and within our company that it's the number 1 priority. So we have a zero tolerance policy on anybody trying to, if we have somebody who's not wearing their mask properly. And I'll tell you what drove that as well, because sometimes employees think that you're just playing hardball with them and you're being tough. What happened was we had the Ministry of Labor come in to 2 of our facilities and write fines to the company, not to now the MOL officer said he could have fined the actual employees for not wearing PPE properly. Even, I mean, we had just people wearing masks down around their chins, and we got fines for that, and that really sent a message home to everybody in the company as well, that it's not just us making, we're not just trying to be punitive about this, that it is a provincial order that businesses have to operate this way. And that's what makes me a little bit nervous when I see our members out in the general public. I know it's been our message from the COVID task force from the beginning, but there is it's a risky thing to have employees certainly driving more than one per vehicle and not wearing full PPE within that vehicle. The MOL and the public, it just looks bad. So that really helped us anyway deliver our message home, was when the MOL came in.
No kidding. Yeah, thanks, Jeff. And Alan, what kind of challenges have you experienced, and what kind of solutions were you able to come up with?
I think the biggest is not that different than what Jeff was talking about there. It's just how important is this PPE from a culture standpoint. Has always been part of the conversation, from work boots to high vis clothing to when we wear a hard hat and don't, when we wear proper spray equipment. So there's lots of different scenarios where PPE is it's a zero tolerance mandatory item within the company. Moving these health and safety protocols for something is what many employees would term as common as a cold or the flu is different than something falling on your head or crushing your toes or cutting your fingers. So I think that's been probably the biggest challenge is to kind of put it in the same context. But as Jeff said, some of what's happening in society, some of the reality, and I hate to say with the new variants being more infectious and more, I guess, common in the workplace and in society, we're seeing maybe a little closer to home more examples of it. So we can't stress enough the information we're getting in Sally and her effort through Landscape Ontario, just to keep in constant contact with Ministry of Labor, Workplace Safety and Prevention, just to understand how these variants, how Ministry of Labor is dealing with it, is help make sure we have the right communication. And then again, the way Scott's presented it in this resource tool hub, as Jeff said, it's been a priority of the task force to kind of make this easy for participation, to make it super clear. And Jeff's right, we are incredibly visible in the public domain. Our vehicles very well lettered up, are prominent in neighborhoods. And at the same time, they are equally visible to the Ministry of Labor and all public enforcement officers. So some of our members have informed us, and we've known this from our communication teams, that Ministry of Transportation, Labor, Ministry of Environment, all these inspectors for the government that are tasked with enforcing government policy are actively patrolling for COVID protocols and COVID requirements in the workplace. So just remember how visible you are there, and again, lean on us and others in the community for, as Domenic said, this is a constantly evolving platform. Even this far into it, we're getting kind of weekly, sometimes monthly, but sometimes weekly updates as these new variants in the government and workplace safety, Ministry of Labor trying to change the protocols. So I think it's gotten better, that it's become more dominant in the news cycle, but it's still a pretty big challenge for us to overcome some of these. It's not going to happen to me.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, Alan. James, we'll come over to you.
So when it comes to PPE, I find our battle is against complacency. I think we've had a pretty good culture of safety in our history as Site One. Not something that I've always had in my career, but one of our first values at Site One is to be a great place to work, and that includes being safe for all of the people that work there, customers that come in, and the general public. So culture of safety has been pretty prominent. But what I found was complacency was a big fight, and people just get into the routine of their day, and oh, I let my mask down around him all the time or her all the time, so it's okay. So what I ended up doing, and unfortunately Jeff was the victim in this case, but he got audited by the Ministry of Labor and then shared that with us at a COVID task force meeting. And so I went to and did audits of all of our facilities. And when I was done the audits, I just simply said, we take one of our best members, one of our people that has been most proactive when it comes to COVID, has a lot of risk. They had 10 pages of yay from the Ministry of Labor and 1 page of nay, right? So if you think for a second that you can let things slide, they congratulated him for 10 pages and still fined him for 1 page, right? So when you put it to people that way, it's like, when you're delivering to a customer, they want you to be right you can make a mistake 1 out of 100 times. If you make a mistake 1 out of every 10 times, then they begin to expect it. And it's the same thing when you're talking about safety and PPE is you need to make sure and audit yourself so you're right 100% of the time. The other thing I did that I thought was really helpful was on my team calls, I would ask a question. This is the CDC's definition of close contact. Within 6 feet with a mask for a cumulative 10 minutes in 24 hours. At one point, that was a definition. And when I would get the whole store team or the whole facility team on a call and I say, okay, that person just tested positive for COVID. How many of you need to go home now? And every single one of them raised their hand. And that was a moment to them where they said, wow, if one person tests positive and we're this relaxed, we all go home. What happens to the store? What happens to our customers, right? So it was finding different ways to ask the question and point out the ramifications of how their complacency is affecting their ability to stay safe from COVID. So it was just using different questions and unfortunately other people's examples from learning and things like that in order to really make sure that they understand how profound their impact is. And complacency is when it comes to safety, complacency is the worst thing you can have. You've got to be aware of it and you've got to be looking for it all the time.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that we're probably all a little bit guilty of some complacency at some point. I can certainly think of some scenarios where that's come into play. Now, we do have some more questions coming in. So Domenic, put you back in the hot seat because there's some really good questions coming in. So Tara asks, if an employee takes a sick day due to the effects of the vaccine, do we fill out a WSIB form who then pays the employee, or do we send a claim to get reimbursed from WSIB? So how does that work?
Okay, so as everyone's aware, the legislation states that every employee, part-time, full-time, doesn't matter, can get the 3 sick days, which are paid by the employer for COVID-related reasons. The employer can then ask for reimbursement from WSIB. As of yesterday at about 3 o'clock, when I spoke to my contact at WSIB, they still do not have the method as to how to get reimbursed. There will be an application to be filled out, and obviously we will be need to send out confirmation of payment, dates, things like that. But as of right now, there's no set system as to how to get reimbursed, unfortunately.
And Dominique, that's, from what we understand, that's going to be retro back to April 19th.
Yes, the sick days starts on April 19 and it ends September, I believe it's the 27th, or 25th, sorry. So in that period is when employers are required to pay employees these days, which will get reimbursed by WSIB up to $200 a day.
So Liz had that question there, Joe. There was just, if someone took a sick day and didn't know this legislation was there and we didn't pay them for that sick day, do we go back or can we go back and pay them for that day and then claim it on our reimbursement?
Yes, the answer is yes.
Right. Another Tara asks, in the instance where an employee is sick with COVID, they're eligible for both the Canadian Recovery Sickness Benefit and the 3 paid days. Is a requirement to use one before the other?
No, there's not. I've spoken to a few clients regarding this exact question, and I think my suggestion would be it's a case-by-case basis. So, for example, if you do have someone that needs to isolate for a week or 2 weeks, I would put them on the Crsb and save those 3 sick days for when they do get vaccinated or when they do when they feel ill. I would use the sick days for that purpose, and then the EI benefit for a longer amount of time. But no, you don't have to use one before the other.
Thank you. And Rohan has a great question relating to anti-vaxxers.
Yes.
Would a COVID-19 vaccine policy compliance work?
Yeah, I'm reading the question. So I guess that goes back to the beginning of our webinar. You cannot force someone to get vaccinated. And I know that Rohan put here a couple of options. Either you take the vaccine, or you have to decline it with a medical certificate, or 3, you have to complete an e-learning that talks about the vaccine. Again, going back to human rights, how about if it's against my religion? How do we cover that? So like I said, as of today, this could change going forward, because I believe it was Alan as well saying that this stuff has been changing since March. What was the day we shut down? March 13 in 2020. It's been changing weekly, daily, monthly. But as of today, you cannot force anyone to take that vaccine. It is an individual's choice. We can only encourage.
Thank you. And I guess as a last question, as we've got a few minutes before the end of our hour, and I'll encourage anyone from the audience, if you do have any additional questions, please do put those in the chat. But for the panel, as business owners and operators, what would be your parting advice to the Landscape Ontario community regarding vaccines and COVID-19 PPE compliance? So Peter, we'll start with you. Sure.
Well, I know we have had COVID at Oriole. We've had a couple of individual cases, and it's what's scary for me as a business owner is my responsibility to keep my staff safe. And I've been working and to the same point that the other panelists have commented on, trying to be positive, trying to be consistent with my messaging, trying to do a better job than the province. But it still has infiltrated my company. And my biggest fear is that I will allow it to spread in my company. And I think that's even a bigger risk for me as a business owner. And that's something that I'm working hard to instill in my staff, that sense of urgency, that they have to be vigilant, they have to be consistent. And I mean, that's a concern. We're worried about liability with the vaccines, about whether you get the vaccine or not. I think the liability is greater if I don't do everything I can to keep my employees safe from COVID. I think that's a bigger risk overall for my staff. And that's basically the starting point that we have in terms of encouraging vaccine adoption. So, right on. Thanks, Peter. Jeff, we'll come over to you.
Yeah, I won't repeat what Peter said, but we feel exactly the same way, that we want to provide a workplace that people can come to work and then go home to their families and not take an illness home with them. So that's our responsibility. And we've really tried to do everything. Our offices have been basically empty for the past 14 months. So whoever can work from home does work from home. I know in our industry that's not possible all the time, but if you can keep your sales teams and your estimators and your accounting folks and those types of people working from home, that's one layer. And then for those who have to come to work, to provide that safe that healthy workplace, lead by example has always been my motto. So all of our team, as much as possible, admin works from home. I don't work from home. I'm there on site, showing, trying to lead by example. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I can do for my team, is to be there and lead by example.
Thanks, Jeff. Alan?
Yeah, it's well, there's two things. One, I wanted to have my parting comment. I also didn't want to miss Rose's question, because I think Domenic might be able to give some insight as to where this sector might fall in. Rose had asked a question earlier, where we get the rapid tests in COVID-19. I had heard the Chamber of Commerce, in partnership with the province of Ontario, is making those available. I don't know if Domenic has any information that might answer that question, or if this sector would be applicable.
I believe you can get the rapid tests through public health. Again, the same theory applies in the sense of, can we force people to take these rapid tests? Because the issue could be they can be invasive, and because of that, people have the choice to say yay or nay. But I think if by going to public health, I believe in Ontario.ca may have a list of places that you can get them. And again, same thing, you can encourage people to take these rapid tests for their safety and for their family safety and for everyone else's safety. Again, as of today, you cannot force it.
Awesome.
You cannot make it mandatory.
That was an early question. I saw it slide by, and I didn't have, and it wasn't the last news cycle. I think the government's got an abundance of them, so they're just trying to get them out there.
Yep. Yep.
My parting comment would be, again, it's been true since the beginning of the formation of this task force. And I always want to thank not only the Landscape Ontario staff that's been with us along this journey all the way along, but also the Landscape Ontario board members that have participated faithfully for, I think, well over 130 meetings now. Is the fact that we have a couple priorities as business owners, and even as an association, is to keep a safe and prosperous workforce and workplace. Our goal has always been to do everything we can in our power and ability to keep communication channels open, to keep our members' businesses' ability to safely operate, to do what we can to be at the forefront of protocols, to provide the right tools to the membership, and to keep the workplace, which is a significant identified area of spread, safe. So I would say the same is true in my business. My responsibilities, many of the panelists here have said, to make sure I create a safe environment so my employees can provide for their families, can come in, and we can service our clients that in many ways, from going all the way through this past winter, those that provide snow removal, emergency services to kind of keep the economy and workplaces and institutions open, all the way through now to obviously the benefits of to mental health and being outdoors and active. So from our growers through our garden centers and landscape contractors, helping all facets of society kind of keep as functional and as operational as possible. We're sympathetic to those like gyms and restaurants and others that haven't been as fortunate as us and identified as areas of community spread. But I would say in our business and the parting is just remember what our priority is, stay true, because there's a lot of emotion attached to this, to be focused on what the end game is and kind of our purpose for being here. So I would say it's as true here at the association as it is in my business.
Very true. Thanks, Alan. James.
I would, my parting message would be a couple of things. Complacency when it comes to screening is going to be one of our biggest challenges heading into this time. We need to know how people feel, and honesty comes out in screening when they know that there's no penalty to telling you the truth. So paid sick days, whether you have to pay for it yourself or you rely on the government program, that will reduce the spread of symptoms, even if it's not COVID related. Even multiple people with runny noses from a standard cold will more hurt your workforce than paying for a couple of sick days to let symptoms and telehealth or the public health unit let you know that your employee is safe to return to work. And then the other thing I would say, Alan touched on it with the COVID task force. I can honestly tell you, I have learned more from being part of this task force about COVID. It's made me more passionate about it. It's made me more aware. It's made me a better leader. Just by having the conversations regularly. Sometimes once a week, it was 5 days a week at the start, once a week and twice a week and on and off. but being as involved in a group conversation of leaders from different categories, different lines of business, I have learned way more from the conversations and examples that each person has shared than I have about a lot of things in my career. So I would encourage people to invite more people into their inner circle and reach out to other people in the association or like companies in other geographies or the same geography, and just have conversation and learn from one another. Power in groups, right? Power in numbers. And we have a great association with a lot to share.
No doubt. Thanks so much for that. A couple of questions did come in toward the end, so Domenic will get these over to you. So from Liz, can employees receive the Crsb and paid sick leave for the same days taken off? I think we had a version of that question earlier, but can you apply for them both at the same time?
The rule of thumb is no, employees cannot double dip. It's one or the other. And the sick days, it's triggered by the employer. So if you know that the person is on the Crsb, then I wouldn't be paying them the sick days, obviously, right? But the rule of thumb is no, they cannot double dip.
Thank you. And Carol has a question. Is it possible to obtain a document of the questions and answers provided sent to our email address? Would it be helpful? Would it be helpful in sharing this information with the team? I think that might be the contact tracing questions. I think.
What I could do is maybe to you, Joe, or to Scott, I can actually send the Covert Protocols. I could send, I have a list of questions. We've covered all these points already, just as a follow-up to the seminar. I can do that. Then you can distribute.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you. And through the EIO COVID-19 task force, we do have a template using Google Forms. So if you haven't accessed that, it is available in the COVID-19 resource hub on horttrades.com. So definitely take advantage of that. It's a great template, and all you need to do is add your own company logo and make it your own. So as a wrap up, I'd like to say thank you to Domenic for your time. I know that it is a busy time, and the rest of the panel. It's a crazy spring, and the weather's nice. So we all know that there's many other things that you could be doing. So thank you for spending time with us and sharing your wisdom and experience.
Thank you for inviting me. It was fun. Just one thing I would like to mention, and it's been mentioned a few times by the panel, the word culture. I think that is probably the most important thing. It's the buzzword of HR these days. You need that culture in your workplace. And if you have the proper culture, implementing these policies does become a lot easier, and employees can be engaged. I'll just leave it at that. We can go on forever in regards to culture, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Absolutely. Maybe a future webinar idea.
There you go.
I will also mention that it's Nurses Week. So if you know a nurse or have one that is very close to you, please reach out and thank them. I know that the nurses that are in the front lines and in the ICUs are going absolutely bonkers at the moment. So
just remember, don't hug them.
yeah. Thank them, but don't hug them. So definitely reach out and show your gratitude to nurses this week. I mean, we should do it all the time, but it's their week. So thank you. And until next time, I hope you're staying positive while testing negative. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.